He was 4 times a Pro Bowler. He is a Saints Hall of Famer, and he probably has the most famous flip phone in the history of the world. He is Joe Horn.
What's up, guys? This is Mike Carney.
This is Toy Cook.
I'm Randy Mueller.
This is Quinn Early.
I'm Delvin Bro.
I'm Alex Molden.
I'm Jake Cup. And this is Life of a Saint.
And this is Life of a Saint.
And this is Life of a Saint.
The Life of a Saint.
Life of a Saint.
Life of a Saint.
And this is Life of a Saint. Whodat?
All right, so Joe, we'll start at the very beginning. I read that when you were younger, you played punter a little bit. Did you have any preference as far as what position you played when you got on the football field?
No, I did not care. Let me help you out, okay? And this will be good for you because you probably never heard this before. There are athletes, athletes, and there are athletes, ATLETES. Okay, let me explain both of those to you. Athletes are guys who can do exactly what they were brought on this earth to do: basketball, NBA basketball, high school basketball, All-American. Basketball is what they were brought here to do. Mm-hmm. Baseball players, that's what they were brought here to do. Marbles, bowling, whatever it is professionally that they feel throughout their career, they do the best in the world. They're athletes. Athletes are guys who can be professional bowlers, can be professional football players, can be professional baseball players, whatever, because they can do it all. I grew up, I came out my mother's womb an athlete.
Now, you originally signed with South Carolina, but you weren't able to see that the whole way through. What happened with that?
I didn't incline myself the right way to make the high score on the SAT. I took one time, and I didn't have the grades to go and play for Sparky Woods.
So, Joe, you discovering this Jerry Rice VHS tape is something that's almost kind of like legendary. Can you take me through how that happened?
Well, I was down on my dime. You know what I'm saying? I left junior college football. I had a baby on the way, and I was a workout freak. I was trying to get my body prepared in case I got a chance to run for NFL scouts, Canadian League scouts, whoever. I made sure my physical temple was going to be 1,000% in shape, and I was going to make sure my route running and what I loved to do most was in tune. So I had $5 left in my pocket. I was walking home. I went by a Blockbuster, and I saw a $3.99 or $2.99, something like that. It was a Jerry Rice workout tape, man, and it was meant for me to see that, and it was meant for me to buy it. My ancestors was looking over me. It was meant for me to buy that, and when I bought it, I studied it. I went out of my backyard or went to the park, and I started doing those drills.
So I'm just curious, has Jerry Rice actually ever heard that story before?
Jerry's World Rice. He has so much on his plate. I don't think he has.
All of your hard work ends up paying off. You end up playing a year in the CFL. What was that like for you, and how did that help kind of like set up the rest of your career?
Well, it was a blessing for me because I ran into an NFL wide receiver coach named Buddy Geist. Buddy Geist was taught up under Lindy Infante. Lindy Infante has a professional resume that speaks for itself, and Buddy Geist was his mentor. Buddy Geist came up under Lindy. Buddy coached Sterling Sharp. Buddy Geist coached Robert Brooks and guys like that. So he basically was there in Memphis. He saw the tape that I made at high school with my brother, and he basically told Pepper Rogers and the GM to bring me in. And once I met Buddy Geist, my world changed.
Who would you say had the biggest hand in helping mold who Joe Horn was in ultimately getting you into the NFL? Like, who was the biggest influence?
Muhammad Ali.
Really?
Yes.
Why is that?
Because I studied Muhammad Ali when I was 15 years old. I didn't study him, but I read up a lot about Muhammad Ali, and everything I read about was positive, and that's what kept me going.
Now, it's never a perfect, straight, easy road for anybody trying to make it into the NFL. What were some of the bumps in the road that you might have gone through?
The toughest thing I had to get through was basically coming up poor, coming up underprivileged, still having to make people around me at a young age think that I had to hold my head up as if I was a millionaire instead of putting my head down because my mom couldn't afford to buy me the best or what my friends could buy. I was living in the projects, and people that my athletic ability put me on the stage and around people who had a mother and a father, who had a 9-to-5 job that could buy them the Nike shoes, that could buy them the nice the suit on Sunday. My mother couldn't afford that because we didn't have a father around. So that's most of the stuff that I had to get through. I had to get through my brother being hit in the head at the telephone booth by a bat with a bunch of guys jumped my younger brother while I was in junior college, and I almost quit football altogether because I wanted to come to Fayetteville and find those guys who hurt my brother and kill them. So it was a lot that I went through. I'm just trying to throw the most important things that came up that was a big block in my life that almost stopped me from not wanting to carry on.
You ended up getting drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs. What was it like getting that phone call?
It was surreal for me. It was, no one thought I would be drafted. Everyone thought I was stupid for working out in Mississippi, 100-degree weather, running around the neighborhood. They didn't really know that I was flying places and taking buses places to work out with different teams. And my hard work ethic, building my body up, making sure I was in shape, making sure I was fast, and I had hands that could catch. I made sure when I ran routes for scouts, and I ran the 40, and I ran the shuttle, and I did the bench press, I was a top athlete that was performing that other NFL teams didn't know about coming out of the Canadian Football League. And Marty Schottenheimer, Jimmy Ray was from Fayetteville. He's in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I was in Fayetteville. So my agent at the time, Ralph Vitola, he knew what I could do. He reached out to Jimmy Ray. Jimmy Ray came and worked me out because he was home vacationing. He worked me out. He went back to Marty Schottenheimer and said, you guys need to draft. We need to bring Joe Horn to Kansas City because this is a receiver that no one in the NFL knows about. He played in the Canadian League, but we need to get him because I know what he'll be in Kansas City if we keep him here.
Now, while you were in Kansas City, somebody came up with the nickname Hollywood for you. Do you remember who that was?
Yes, I remember vividly who it was.
Who's that?
Derek Thomas.
Okay.
My locker was beside Derek Thomas' locker for 4 years before he died. And that was very emotional for me because that's the same year that I signed with the New Orleans Saints. And I wanted to stay in Kansas City just to to show Derek Thomas that I would do what I told him I would do once I re-signed with the Chiefs. And that was be a Pro Bowler and win a Super Bowl. Unfortunately, Kansas City thought that I wasn't worth the pay grade. So New Orleans did. And that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Whatever's meant to happen in life always does.
When you arrived in New Orleans, there was almost like somebody flipped a light switch, immediate success. What do you attribute that to?
Well, it's so much. Let me see. I contribute my success to the fans. That's my family, my children, because they were young, and they were very young. So I had something to come home to. I had something to be great for. Number one, but secondly was the fans. It was the fans. They got to be the greatest fans in the world that I've ever experienced because they ride or die. I'm talking about literally. They will. Some New Orleans Saints fans will kill you. They will kill you if the Saints lose a game and you say too much and you run your mouth too much. There are New Orleans Saints fans that will literally go to prison for life and end your life if you say too much.
I mean, I'm laughing, but yeah, I get it.
I'm just telling you the truth.
I get it.
So,
yeah.
I'm telling you some facts.
Just a reminder that if you haven't checked out all the other episodes in the Life of a Saint series, make sure to check those out. Let's get back to it. Now, I know a lot of the Saints players had a pretty big role in navigating through Katrina for the region. What was it like for you personally going through that?
It was hell. It wasn't really hell for the guys that were making millions because let's be real. When you're making hundreds of thousands of dollars and you have a billionaire family that's paying you a paycheck every week, Hurricane Katrina was hard for the people that were actually broke and lost everything. So the people that tell you that it was miserable, my miserable was miserable for the fans. I could deal with riding my Mercedes-Benz 25 miles to practice and sometimes being late because of the traffic and us being uprooted to another facility. I could deal with that because I had a mansion to go back home to.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So let's keep it 100. I was more upset and hurt because the fans and having to see that every day, having to take a limo ride all the way to New Orleans just to bring cash to families that were stuck in Jackson, Mississippi, families that was just misplaced. So it was hell in that regard. But, you know, having to play games in New York when we should have been playing it in New Orleans, you know, it was what it was. At the end of the day, it made me upset to have to train and do different things. But at the end of the day, we were making big bucks, man. So, hey, I try not to complain too much. My complaining was for we should have had our season canceled. I think the New Orleans Saints season should have been canceled, and we should have helped New Orleans rebuild. And that's what I told Mr. Tagliabue. And when we had a behind-the-closed-doors meeting about whether the Saints should stay in San Antonio and what did I think about that, I told Mr. Tagliabue, with all due respect, I can't play in San Antonio. I will not be able to play in Texas because I will not be able to be here knowing that the fans that loved us and the people there won't have a team anymore, and we won't be there to rebuild that city. I told them the best thing that you can do is bring us back to New Orleans and help us rebuild New Orleans, and the NFL will look like darlings. And the next morning on ESPN, we were awarded back to New Orleans. That was my Super Bowl.
Now, it's amazing to know how much of a role you actually played in keeping the Saints in New Orleans. Do you feel that not enough people know that story?
They don't, but you know what? I'm not trying to put a shadow over what Sean Payton and Mickey Loomis and Drew and Reggie Bush and all those guys came and won a Super Bowl either. So that dynasty with Drew and Sean, man, I'm proud of those guys, and I'm so glad that they came to New Orleans and helped rebuild the city.
Obviously, when you speak to Joe Horn, you got to talk about the cell phone celebration. At that time, did you feel like there was like this keeping up with the Joneses thing where you've got some of the other premier wide receivers in the league with their touchdown celebrations? Did you feel the need to kind of keep up with them and kind of like level up and one-up them?
Yeah, I was. I was really trying to I was trying to have the best touchdown celebration because Chad and T.O., I think me, Chad, and T.O. were the top three that were really doing it every other week. And I was just dancing. I really didn't do a lot of props. I didn't have a lot of touchdown celebrations. I usually just boogie. I would shake or I would dance or do something. But when they started bringing out the props and stuff, I said, you know what, let me shut this shit down. Let me, if they really want to see who can really, really have the best celebration, I'll shut this shit down, and so that's what I did. It was a Sunday night football game. My kids couldn't go to the game, of course, because they would get home at 3 or 4 in the morning, 2 or 3 in the morning, maybe 1 or 2 in the morning to be exact, because the game started 7, 8 at the end, or probably about 11:30, 12. Yeah, we'll get home about 2 o'clock. So I had to do something, and I told my son my kids that I would call them. I'll call them, and of course, you know, me thinking, you know, like I think, I called Michael Lewis and I told him put my cell phone up under the goalpost. I didn't care which one he put it up under because I knew I was in the game plan that much that night. Now, a lot of people think that I had phones in both end zones. I didn't. I just knew when Michael Lewis told me which one it was in, I knew it was an opportunity when we were playing against the Giants. I knew that my number would be called and that AB, if he saw man-to-man coverage, of course, he would be crazy not to come to Hollywood. So I knew it was in that end zone, and like I keep telling people, man, fate is fate. If it wasn't meant for me to pull that cell phone out that night, I would have dropped that touchdown pass. I would have slipped up on my route. I caught that ball. It was meant for that cell phone and that celebration and the attention that it got to come out that night. That's why it happened. If it wasn't meant to happen, it wouldn't have happened.
And regarding the Michael Thomas tribute celebration where he kind of mimicked what you did, have you spoken to him about that?
You know, I haven't spoke to Mike a lot. I sent text messages to him and told him I appreciate him even mimicking that to do that because he didn't have to. And that brought my name back into relevance there around the world and actually in New Orleans. You know, I know the fans love me. I know there's people that remember that celebration. But for Mike to do it on a national stage that night, it was selfless of him. He basically gave me some props by doing that. He didn't tell me why he did it. I haven't talked to him on that type of. I haven't been around him to really ask him what was he thinking when he did that. But he did it. And like I always say, what's meant to happen always does.
Do you have any regrets leaving New Orleans, where you're seemingly an icon in New Orleans, leaving New Orleans to go to our division rival in Atlanta?
You know what? The only regret, and I heard the president, Mr. Bush, who I was blessed to shake hands with and meet in New York, the George Bush Sr. Mm-hmm. I heard someone ask her a question before she passed. What was her regrets? And it relates back to mine. The only regret that I had from leaving New Orleans was if I made someone feel bad, or if I hurt someone's feelings, or if I didn't do an autograph, I didn't stay long enough after practice to sign a baby's autograph that I could have signed, or I said something to hurt someone's feelings while I was there. That's my only regrets.
Gotcha.
If I said something and it hurt someone's feelings, or I said it in a way that it made their day or their night feel bad, I regret doing that, and I wish I can change it. I can change it and give the positive back to them.
Was it particularly tough walking away from the NFL, or were you at the point where you were kind of like ready for a new chapter in your life?
I'm just a little. I was a little disgruntled for a couple of years because the way I left the game was sad, and the way I left the game wasn't the way I wanted to leave the game. I left the game running a 4.42 40. I left the game strong, still being able to run routes. And the reason I left the game because Mike Mularkey, who was an offensive coordinator, and I said I'll wait to tell the story, but I'm going to give it to you. Okay? Mike Mularkey came to Atlanta as an offensive coordinator. And I don't know if Mike had other coaches in the league that told him bad stuff about me. I don't know what it was that he didn't like about Joe Horn. Well, Mike Mularkey had the power because I was an old veteran. I was with a new franchise, and my word wasn't going to overpower Mike Mularkey's word to Mike Smith. I talked to Mike Smith about it. He would pick at me. He would put me in practices late. Whatever he was trying to do was trying to make me see that he didn't like me. So what I did, I said, hey, I have a guaranteed contract. I really don't have to play for this dude because he's pissing me off. Mike Mularkey made me hate football my last year in Atlanta.
Wow.
And I think that was a travesty for Arthur Blank and the Atlanta Falcons because I wanted to stay there longer to mold Roddy White. But I already grabbed him enough because I knew this offensive coordinator was going to get me out of there. So I had to ask for a trade knowing that nobody's going to trade for Joe Horn in his last years playing in the NFL. So I had to make it like I wanted to trade and I wanted out of Atlanta, but I really wanted to retire and be done with football. I didn't want to go anywhere else. I could have went to New York. I could have went to Tennessee. I could have went somewhere else and been a pretty good player. But I said, you know what? This is it for me. And Mike Mularkey basically, and I'm not trying to give him credit for retiring Joe Horn, retiring me. I'm just giving you the facts of why I walked away from the game.
Gotcha.
I didn't like his coaching style anyway, because I felt like he was a 3 yards in a cloud of dust type coach. He liked running the ball. He really didn't like throwing it that much. So ultimately, that was his, in Tennessee, I guess. So anyway, it was all good. That's what I regret. How I left the game and I allowed a offensive coordinator who shouldn't have ever been a damn offensive coordinator allow me to tell Mr. Blank, hug Mr. Blank in the hallway and tell him with tears in my eyes that there's something that's going on with the offensive coordinator that I know you don't want to get involved with. I know I'm an old player, Mr. Blank. I love you. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to be in your building, be in your presence. I'll always remember it, and I'll always love you for it. I told Mr. Blank that. He hugged me, shook my hand, and the next day I was in Thomas Dimitrov's office telling them that I wanted to trade.
So the Saints give you a call and let you know that you were inducted into the Saints Hall of Fame. What was that phone call like for you?
It was an honor. It was an honor. Of course, anytime New Orleans called me and they're doing anything. But my big honor, what I really will be, the phone call I'm waiting on, is for them to tell me that they're retiring to me 87. It really would mean a lot for me if the Benson family would call me and say, Joe, we want to retire 87. But you know what? There's a lot of guys whose numbers probably, Deuce McAllister, I'm sure, could look for that same phone call. So that's the phone call that really, really will break me down.
So Joe Horn, the father, what's it like seeing the success of all your kids?
Well, it's meant to happen. My boys, I put some work in with them along the way. I had a blueprint for all of them, and right now that blueprint is looking real good. It took some ups and downs. I'm not a perfect man. I've made some mistakes in my life. I've hurt a lot of people. But I tried to keep my kids on the right path. I tried to be there for them when they needed me. And I tried to give them the skills and the do's and don'ts of life. My son is with the Ravens right now. I text him every day. I try to tell him that it's a business. You're not there to be liked. You're there to be respected. And the only way that's going to happen and you're going to get respected is you win your routes and catch the footballs. Because of who you are, the Ravens aren't going to keep you because of your name. He knows that. So that's why he's running great routes, he's catching balls, and he's doing his job. So if he is released, he know he did his best, and the camera and the eye in the sky doesn't lie. Right. So my son in South Carolina, JC, I wanted him to be a defensive back. I didn't want him to be a receiver. If JC was taught to be a receiver, he probably would be one of the best receivers on the Gamecocks on the Gamecocks roster right now, because he can run routes and he can catch balls. But I wanted him to be an all-pro one-day cornerback. And right now, he's working well with them. He's studying hard. He's working his ass off. He's grinding. When there's vacation days in South Carolina that Coach Muschamp give the guys, JC is in the weight room. He's in the film room. He's taking days instead of coming to Georgia. He's taking days to stay in Columbia and try to be out of there in 3 and done in the first round. That's what he wants. That's his desire. And I'm trying to teach him the off-the-field antics of what to do and what not to do. That's all that's all I can give him. I have a daughter who writes her own music. She sings very well. Her name is Gia Horn, Jiahorn. Have another son named YJ. He's acting. He's doing chorus music. Very talented. So, and I have my son Jacob Horn, who committed to Ole Miss. He's a wide receiver. So all of my kids, man, are doing wonderful. I'm proud of all of them, and their moms for doing a great job as well.
What's next for you, Joe?
Well, what's next for me? I'm really trying to. I'm trying to do a lot of stuff. I have my own sausage and barbecue sauce is doing pretty well in the casinos in Louisiana. They're doing decent right now. I'm really focusing on my children, man. I want to see them make it. That's my new job. My new job basically is to see my children successful. Once JC is drafted, if he's drafted, once Joe Jr. is on a roster in the NFL, once Gia has a record company that sees her talent and sign her, once YJ is on to, or Jacob is on to Ole Miss doing great things, their success is my success. So I have an invention that I came up with. I invented something that's going to come out in the next year or two that's going to shock the world.
Wow.
It's going to shock the world, and it's not there right now, but I'd rather talk about it when it's actually in fruition. So Gotcha. That's just something that you'll know that Joe told me about this, and wow, look at him now.
And how's your health these days?
I'm in the concussion protocol, the settlement thing, and I'm taking my test. I took my last neurologist test a couple of weeks ago. It didn't You know, from what the neurologist was telling me, it didn't sound good. But at the end of the day, brother, I mean, you really don't know. I mean, guys, when they're 55, 60, they start finding out if something's really wrong. Right now, I lose thought. I lose sense of thought sometimes, but most of the time, I'm okay. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I can't read or I'm falling over out of my chair. No, I'm not right now. But I do forget some things. I am off balance sometimes. So only doctors can take tests and tell you where you really are. And right now, I don't have my grade to see where I really am. That's just the honest truth.
Episode 15 in the books with the legendary Joe Horn. Can't thank him enough. And thank you for sticking it out to the end. Who dat to you? We'll see you on the next one.